And if you're going to do it, welcome and thank you for being here with us tonight. First, I would like to congratulate all the members of the programs committee for a fabulous job that I have. So thank you very much. And the co-chairs, Joe Smith and Alan Lewis. I also would like to invite you to the On the Fashion Club holiday party, which will be on December 5th at here at the same place. Okay, good venue. So I hope to see you here on December 5th to celebrate our holiday party. Also, I would like to make sure that you know that the 60th anniversary Femi Awards will be on February 6th, and all are invited. And I hope to see you there. It will be a great event. Now I would like to call Alan Lewis, co-chair of the Programs Committee, to start the event. Thank you.
So we're really excited to have MPD with us tonight. Just so you all know, not loud enough. Is that better? Yeah. Anyway, we'd like to say that we have 100 people here and 10 new members. I'd like to introduce something that MPD and introduce our speaker. Just for those of you in the room who might not be familiar, MPD is an international organization in 20 different countries that's been around for over 50 years, and they are the premier, I think I read, in the top 10 consulting analytical firms, am I saying that right, in the world. And they have, they interview over 12 million consumers a year. They track a tremendous amount of information, and they have a lot to say about the evolution of what's going on in retail, or what's not going on in retail. So I'd like to introduce Don Unser. He is our guest speaker for tonight. He's the Vice President for, did I say it right? I told you. For retail, and he's going to lead the conversation for tonight. Okay? Thanks.
All right, good evening. So thank you very much for having us. Appreciate it. I really appreciate having the cocktail hour before for a couple reasons. But one of the reasons is because I got around and talked to some of you all, and whether I'm at the toy industry or the auto parts industry or the beauty industry or the home industry, a lot of the same threads go from industry to industry in terms of what's happening in retail and the challenges we're all facing. There's never been a more tumultuous time in retail than right now, at least in my career, in the 25, 30 years I've been in retail myself. So thank you for having MPD. We're going to go about 40, 45 minutes, and we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end. This material has been curated over the last 3 or 4 years, looking at the retail trends across all the industries we track. So if I can have everybody step out of your industry tonight, just for the next 30, 40 minutes. What people like about this material is they like to hear about what's happening in other industries and how they're handling e-commerce, how they're handling direct-to-consumer, how they're handling all these other things that are happening out there. So I'll be giving a lot of examples from other industries. I do have a few things in here from your industry as well that the team will help you with. Great team. Yep. Okay. Very good. So let's get started. Okay. Here we go. So this is a slide that MPD publishes quarterly. I know it's a lot of numbers. I won't have all number slides. I'm going to have a lot of concept slides up here as well. But this is probably the most comprehensive view of the U.S. consumer that's available. This tracks 1.8 trillion of U.S. consumer spend across NPD's categories and the categories that Nielsen tracks. So Nielsen tracks food and drug, okay? So of this $1.8 trillion in the bottom right-hand corner, the first thing I want your eyes to go to is the growth rate, which is negative 0.2%. This is the first time we've hit a negative growth rate in the U.S. in retail since the recession, okay? And we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. A couple of caveats. Two big industries in retail that are growing that we do not track and Nielsen does not track. So I just want to caveat that. Home improvement. You all see that both Home Depot and Lowe's are comping at 4 to 6%, so there's good growth going on in that sector. Furniture is also growing, so we do not track that as well. But we do track most everything else. This is in rank order of growth rate per industry. So you have the prestige beauty industry is growing the fastest of any industry that we or Nielsen track. And then accessories, it has been consumer electronics at the bottom for 3 years that I've been presenting this. It has now been overtaken by the accessories business. Accessories for NPD is handbags, luggage, wallets, things like that. And that's primarily driven by the handbag industry. And you know the story there of a couple of brands that have driven that down. A couple of things that I would note also, in prestige beauty, toys, and housewares are three fastest growing industries. The average sales price in those industries is all up. Okay? In accessories, consumer electronics, and footwear, average sales price is down. That's kind of a fundamental that always drives these charts. Now, some would say that there's a correlation to innovation and higher sales price, and that is certainly the case in some of these. We'll get into that as I talk about some of these industries as we drill down. A couple other things to note. By the way, prestige beauty for NPD is the cosmetics, skincare, and fragrance industry, and we track the higher end products. Mostly the brands that would be selling at the counters at the drugstores, at the department stores and up. Okay. The more mass prestige, mass beauty is in health and beauty aids over there, just below 1% growth. Okay. Commercial food service is the largest industry up there. That's the restaurant business. That 1.6% growth represents 100% of price inflation in the restaurants. Traffic in restaurants in the United States is down. Okay? The other thing that's happening in restaurants, and I don't have a slide here on it, is that there's a huge movement of people taking food home, whether it be takeout or food being delivered to home. That is a huge trend that's happening in the U.S. It's been going on for about 2 or 3 years. It's going to do nothing but accelerate for the coming years. Okay? Let's see. Any other? I'm going to talk about footwear. Consumer electronics is always at the bottom of the list. That is an industry that's very, very tough. I spent 21 years at Hewlett-Packard. As soon as you come out with a new product, it's a race to the bottom. Absolutely. The retailers take you down to cost, typically being advertised within a few weeks of introduction. It's just a brutal, brutal business, right? Yep. And even though there's been some exciting news in consumer electronics with wearables, drones, home automation, it's not enough to counteract the declining prices and the saturation points for TVs and computers. Those are just huge, huge industries. Okay. I think everything else I'm going to make some points on as we go. Apparel being flat. It's the first time we've seen apparel at flat. It's been growing anywhere between 1 to 3%. So that's kind of a new piece as well. You all are in the industry, so I don't need to tell you what's going on in your piece of that, but we will show some slides here in a little while. Okay, so this is a comprehensive view. For those of you in the room that are clients, we do share this with our clients every quarter when it comes out. I would encourage you to send this straight up to your C-suite. Your CEO should be looking at these macro trends that are happening in retail at least once a quarter or once a half. Okay? All right. So this is 12 months rolling data for 6 quarters. And you can see the decline in retail. If you take food out, and you look at just the green line, that's taking the restaurant business out, we're actually approaching -1% in US retail. So I use this information with some of the top retailers in the country and present to them very frequently. And the number one question I get is, okay, I get it. I see that my traffic's down. I see that they're not coming in with their discretionary spend into retail. Where else are they going? Where are they shifting their spend? So the prevailing thought on that is really they're spending anything that's worthy of taking a picture of with your phone. Right? So anything having to do with memory. I know people say experiences. I like to say memories. That's really Marshall Cohen uses that, our chief industry analyst. But there are lots of proof points out there. Here's the national park attendance in the U.S. That's certainly a proof point. Another proof point is the cruise industry worldwide. It's gone up 29% since 2010 to 2016. And they keep building more and more capacity of cruises. I just went on my first cruise. It's a fantastic experience in terms of value, right? I mean, it really is. So I'm going to do more of those. This one is kind of a fun one. So this is the RV sales in the United States. And it's really wild that we are now approaching almost 500,000 units of new RVs sold every year. Guess what age group is driving this? It's not the boomers. It's not the boomers. It's the millennials. The millennials they're buying these small entry-level units, and they want a different experience. They want to be able to take that money shot that is put all over Facebook or whatever social platform they're using these days. And that is a huge trend in the U.S. Now, I'm not going to talk about it today, but Marshall goes through a whole series on this whole I-brand thing. What millennials and what we're seeing a lot of consumers identify with is they want to be unique. They're really driving away from anything that has to do with I'm just like everybody else. And we're seeing more and more of a trend to that. And we're seeing some brands take advantage of that and really do well with it. Don't have time to go into that tonight. That's a whole section that we take clients through, but that's an interesting one. I think this is part of that trend. Okay? I'm not going out to buy an RV. I'll stay by hers. I like that turnkey kind of operation. So this is that same slide that I showed before, but this is the e-commerce. So the number one topic that I get asked to talk about is what's happening in e-commerce across all the industries, and where am I in my industry along for the ride? Because it's been so disruptive, where I sell my products through, how I price, my channel management, all of that. So take a look at these growth rates. 25, 21, 17 for toys, okay? So there's lots of growth there, lots of headroom for those industries. But for the first time ever, I've got 5 industries that are in the negative growth rate for online. There is going to be a point in every single industry, including yours, that the e-commerce sales will mature. And when that happens, there's lots of things that happen from a channel perspective. We're already seeing it in multiple industries. The brick and mortar retailers become relevant again for growth. They've always been relevant, but more relevant for growth. And that's a really key point. Also, the brick and mortar retailers online becomes more relevant at that point. We are seeing Best Buy, for example, regain their #1 market share in LCD TVs away from Amazon. And TVs was a must-win category for Amazon for many, many years. We'll get into a lot of Amazon conversation here in a few minutes. Okay? So this is actually growing at 5.7%, $139 billion. This is the growth rate here. So what you won't see in the Wall Street Journal is that e-commerce, at least in the industries we track, they're actually dipping below 4% growth without food in the U.S. And the question that I get on this one is, at what point are they going to become flat? And I think we're going to see that probably in the next, I'm going to say 8 to 12 quarters. We will see approaching flat in a lot of the industries we track. Food still has lots of headroom. Some of the industries we track still has lots of headroom. But some of our categories are starting to mature and actually starting to retrench. Okay? So I did want to also show this. NPD does a fair amount of work taking a look at what's happening from a geographical standpoint in the U.S. We like to talk about national numbers, but really what's happening is that there is a different story in every town in the United States, in every single category, okay? This is a apparel dollars per capita for every township in the United States. Township is a geographical area that has more than 10,000 people, less than 50. So it's really a town, okay? And you can see it's a heat map, so anything green is high growth, and then we move our way to red, which is of course negative. So a couple things that I want to point out here. You've got a couple of pockets of big growth in the U.S. The Carolinas have been growing now for about 18 months, over-indexing the rest of the country. There's some theories on that. Some of it certainly is people moving there, but there's also a health of the consumer that's considered there as well. Not sure about this one. I don't have a theory on that. The red through the center of the country, that has to do with jobs around one industry, right? Which industry is that? Energy, right? The loss of jobs in energy from the Dakotas all the way down to the Texas area are all jobs. We also see a lot of negativity going around with any of the stores that sit on the borders, right? Those used to be the cash cows for like 15, 17, almost 20 years. The retailers would put those stores right there on the border, whether it be the Canadian border or the border with Mexico, or then of course we have the border with the southern, we used to call them the Southern Keys, which is the Orlando and Miami markets, right? Because there's so much tourism there. It all depends on what's happening there with the currency of the country that they're coming from. So when the peso and dollar flipped, the sales went south. When the Canadian dollar flipped, that all went south up north. So these are some of the worst performing as a percentage of growth stores of all the chains that you sell through are on these borders. They were the cash cows for 15, 20 years, right? Okay. And by the way, these stores on the border down here went really, really south in terms of sales about in the November timeframe. And then again in January. Not making a political statement, I'm just saying that's what happened. Okay. All right, so one level underneath the industry are the categories that we track. These are all the categories in the United States of all the industries that we track that are more than $150 million in growth. Now I can spend 2 hours on this slide because the consumer is telling us what they will shift their spend to with the slide. And it's just a lot of fun to dissect, but let me give you a few things. So the makeup industry, or the makeup is the driver for the beauty industry. It had been skincare, but it's now makeup. This has to do, the prevailing theory on this is that most women have to be camera ready for those pictures that are being taken. One of the CEOs from one of the biggest beauty brands had a great quote. He said that a millennial woman will take more pictures in a month than her mother took in a lifetime. Right? When you think about that, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay? So, stereo headphones, that is the Energizer Bunny of categories. That has been on a growth tear for the better part of 12 years. Growing ASPs, I'll talk about that in a further part of the conversation here. Games and puzzles. This is all about the consumer coming back home. We see multiple proof points that the consumer wants to spend more time at home. So think about that in terms of your products, your strategy of talking to the consumer, your strategy of marketing your products. Okay? Some other ones in here. The three lines there in green. So athletic footwear had been the driver of the footwear industry for many, many years. And it was mostly the performance basketball shoes. What has shifted here in the last 18 months, almost 24 months now, is that it has moved to the retro. Now we call it inspired by because the biggest brand there makes us call it that, but it's really the retro. It's really the Chuck Taylors, Stan Smiths, help me out, Todd. Jordans, yeah. So there's multiple brands that are driving it. But that is a shift that I will tell you the brands are not driving. That's a consumer-driven shift, right? Okay. Some other ones in here. I think portable beverageware is kind of fun. I don't see anybody with one, but these are all the water carriers that are way overpriced. Yep, they're $20, $30, $40, and they're selling like crazy. In fact, they're growing by almost $200 million annually, right? So a lot of this, there's also another thing that the consumer is doing. The top growing category up until about a year ago on this chart was $2 billion of growth for active bottoms. So active bottoms is the yoga pants, right? And so there's multiple proof points that our consumer wants to appear healthier, okay? We also track food and consumption. I will tell you that there's lots of proof points saying that we're not eating healthier. But we want to appear to be healthier, and we want to project that. We want to make it look like we just came back from working out, even though we haven't worked out in a long time. So that is definitely something happening with the consumer as well, right? Any other ones on here? Oh, can anybody get this one? Glues and adhesives. It's Elmer's glue. Come on, where's my parents of small children? What's that about? Slime. Absolutely. Elmer's glue is used to make this slime thing that's just crazy, and they're selling it by the gallons. If you haven't been to Costco, they actually sell it by the 2-gallon thing. And Elmer's glue, right? Yeah, glitter kinds. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Yeah, that's a consumer-driven trend too. Elmer's wish they kind of came up with that. All right, so we can't talk about the highest ones without talking about the lowest performing categories. But by the way, for the first time since I've been presenting this in 3.5 years, I don't have an apparel category up there. Not one. Not one apparel category driving any growth. Okay. Got a few on this one. These are the negative ones. Okay. We've got bottoms, we've got tops. We'll get into a little bit of that here in a little while. There's bags, negative 13%, down almost $400, $500 million. That's mostly Michael Kors, a large percentage of that, right? Some other ones up there. Sweats and active bottoms. Now, the question we get on that, showing that that's down 4%. I just said it was growing by $2 billion not even a year ago. The active craze is not gone. It has just moved to a lower ASP. So anybody that can make an active apparel product, I think is making it at this point. Anybody that can sell it is selling it at this point, and we have naturally gravitated to a lower average sales price. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Units are up. What's the stat that 3 years ago there were 400, 500 brands in active that consumer says this is an active brand, and now it's 1,800 was the latest. The consumer said that it has, I believe that to be an active brand, which is just amazing, right? Any others on here that we want to go through? Anything formal, business attire, tailored clothes, fashion footwear, all down. The casual movement to the workplace is definitely in full force. We can show lots and lots of examples of that. Very little formal clothing is up. Okay? That's another big trend that's out there. So Fitbit was the number one. Yes, it is. It's Fitbit and all the other products that they're the number one. No, it's not. It's not the embedded technology in the clothing. So the question was, is wearable tech Fitbit? It's the device. It's not anything embedded in the clothing. Okay. Fitbit was the number one product for holiday 2 years ago. Last year it was the headphones. So Fitbit, I've never seen a category or product find so much distribution in such a short amount of time. It was everywhere. You could buy it at anywhere but the gas station, right? And they had those great displays, and then it got saturated. And now there's a big pullback in terms of who's carrying it, and are they seeing growth, is it a traffic driver, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I'm going to speed up a little bit here. So this is the view for some of your categories. This is the apparel categories. These are the top growing categories in terms of dollars. Year over year, this is through 12 months ending through August data. So you see woven shirts and dresses are the big drivers to the left here. The top decliners are t-shirts and sweaters. Anything else you want to make a point on that?
5 out of 10 of breakouts.
Our
Innerwear is
innerwear swimwear. Okay. So this is a fun slide here. So I get asked, what are the big draws on discretionary income? And one that is kind of fun, and I'm once again not making any political statements, but marijuana is expected to be a $50 billion industry by the time each of the states either voted in or don't vote it in, either none or medicinal only or medicinal and recreational. I will tell you that all the states are pretty enthusiastic when they saw the tax revenue that hit Colorado, right? That was just crazy. So just to put that in perspective of what that could do from a draw of the consumer spending power. So right now it's reporting from about 4 states, recreational and medicinal, and it's $7 billion. So $7 billion is the size of the sweatshirt industry or the makeup industry in the US. Okay? If it goes to 21, that's the size of toys, the entire toy industry. If we go up to $50 billion, we're talking about the entire accessory industry, as I talked about it, or even the IT hardware industry for consumers. So this is going to potentially be a big drag, or a shift. I wish I was that smart. Alright, we're moving right along here. Alright, let's talk about headphones. So a lot of industries ask me to get out of bed. I'm sorry. You really think I so a lot of industries are experiencing declining average sales prices. And they asked me to always give an example of one industry that has reversed that, and what did they do? I think this is the best example out there. This is the headphone industry. This is 11 years of data. Now, the way to read this is the size of the industry is in the blue, and goes with this. So it went from $200 million category up to $1.4 billion over the 11 years. The green line is the legend on the right there. That's the average sales price. So we went from about $20 for headphones to $50 for headphones, and it keeps going up. Okay. So the question I get asked here is, how did they get here? All right. So the one bump of the ASP that happened in 2007. What was that? What brand was that? It was Bose. It was Bose, right? They came out with the noise-canceling headsets, and then all of a sudden everybody in first class had to be cool and have those. Remember that, right? I was one of those, like $400. But it bumped the ASP, but it did not bump the industry. What happened, the big one was Beats in 2009. But what was innovative about Beats? What did they do that was innovative? I'm obviously not looking for the obvious answer. It has nothing to do with pot. So the product was somewhat innovative, but how they went to market was one of the innovations. The other innovation is not as obvious. You guys remember when you bought your first large screen TV and you overpaid for that cable? And that person that sold you the large screen TV said, you gotta have this $100 cable, it's gold plated and all this crazy stuff. The same cable that you buy for $9 today that performs just as good. That was a company called Monster. And they had like 90 points of margin in that, right? So the retailers loved Monster. That's who distributed Beats. So my point I want to make with you on this is that every brand I'm talking to right now, if you're not at your boardroom talking about how you distribute your product, as much as you're talking about your product, you're probably falling behind. Points of distribution and changing how you distribute your product to keep up with how consumers are buying products today is paramount. And the best-in-class companies are all thinking about that right now. Okay? I'll get into that a little more here. I gotta speed up. I'll never make it. This is the e-commerce percent of dollars that are done in each industry. So I call it e-commerce penetration. And what I want to point out here, this is by industry at the bottom. The number is what movement it has had over the last year. So you can see that in most cases it's still moving up. We are seeing some subcategories of consumer electronics and in small appliances. And there's one other category that we're starting to see it cap out. This is that maturation thing I was talking about. So we actually think that in the next 2 or 3 years, these are the points that they'll be at. Some of them may get up to 40%, I'm not sure, but you need to plan on how much of your business is going to be done online. How much will the consumer buy online? Okay? We're also seeing something happening from Amazon. Is anybody familiar with the term crapping out? Yeah? Okay. I don't know that's happening in this industry yet, so I'm actually surprised you guys know about that. In several industries, we're hearing from the vendor community that it reaches a point where Amazon has said we have to make money in this category now. And it algorithmically craps out, which means can't realize a profit. And what happens is you get a form letter from Amazon, buyers and calling. You get a form letter that says, starting next week, we're going to take no more POs from you, we're going to take no more shipments, you need to now distribute your product through your marketplace. And that's how it's going to happen, right? That's the shift of being profitable for that category. They've taken all the share they need, and we're starting to see category by category that's starting to happen, brand by brand. And I think that's going to happen across the board, right? That's also a sign that we're reaching maturation for that category. This is in your industry. Todd's team ran this for you. This is the current percent. You can see the dresses and swimwear are very high. That's pretty obvious because so many retailers consider that a seasonal business and don't carry it year-round. That's what's driving that, clearly. And by the way, the retailers that are carrying that stuff year-round are killing it. And we've been trying to talk to retailers about carrying those two categories year-round and becoming a destination. Marshall's been talking about it for a better part of 5 years, pleading for the retailers to, think about these categories year-round. Okay. Some interesting facts about Amazon. The amount of products that they're able to carry is just amazing. So this was done a year ago. We did a web scraping. They're well over 500 million products now available on Amazon. And just to put this in perspective, the largest format store in the U.S. is a Walmart Superstore. How many items do you think are carried at a Walmart Superstore? About 142,000 units. So put that in perspective. By the way, the average warehouse, we've heard, the 1.2 million square foot big warehouses that Amazon's building only can house about 5 to 7 million products. So if they're up to 500, you can see the power of marketplace and the long tail, and the fact that inventory is being held elsewhere. It's an absolutely brilliant model. The other best-in-class companies are not thinking about Amazon as a retailer. Amazon's a platform. Amazon's a world-class supply chain platform with a great loyalty program on the front end called Prime, right? And I think they're going to be the most efficient place to distribute products for the years to come. We think about 55 to 60% of the households in the U.S. have access to a Prime membership. That could cap out at probably around 70. This has slowed down tremendously. We've also done some research and we think that the renewal rate is up there around a Costco membership in the 90s, low 90s. That's an incredible renewal rate. So buyers need to think at retailers that the first place a consumer is going to look for anything, if they're a Prime member, is online, Prime, right? So they have to kind of change the way they're thinking with that. So I get asked about when does the encroachment of this platform settle down a little bit and we get back into our normal channels? I think the answer really, this is 2-day free, we know about that. Prime now, in some markets you can get product within a couple of hours. But I think the answer really resides in their expansion of the same day, okay? So we've been doing some research, we've been doing some research to say how much of the country can do same day. And right now it's about 42% of the U.S. They can deliver 1 million items, order by noon, get by 9 p.m. That's world-class supply chain, and I believe that they're going to do nothing but keep expanding this to probably to where it reaches 60% of the U.S. I think they start getting into diminishing returns after that, right? So I think that's going to be very, very powerful. Voice is here. It's here to stay. It's hot. We now have approached 11 million units of Alexa and Google Home sold here in the U.S. If a person buys an Alexa, they typically will buy a second Echo device within 2 months. They love it. And I'm sure some of you have a relationship with Alexa that you won't talk about. I'm not gonna make you talk about body group. So that's that slide. But today, these are the things that they're using Alexa for. They're not using it to do commerce. They will be using it to do commerce. Right now, they're in your home. They want to get you frequency. They want you asking the weather. They want you to get it into your normal daily routine, right? And these things are just going to get better and better on what they can do for you. So another big concept in U.S. retail, about 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, okay. Another big concept in U.S. retail is we see stores closing. And you guys are going to start losing distribution of how many stores carry your product. It's already started to happen. It's going to continue probably for another 2 years, I believe, in the apparel space. With that, many of you are brands that have to grow. I think all of you have, somebody you have to answer to that has to grow. And so you have to find new ways to distribute your product. And so the stores are definitely feeling that. So one thing we see that's universal across the board with every manufacturer that we're talking to right now is they all have something that they're ramping up their direct-to-consumer. We see this across the board in every single industry that we play with. Now, on the reverse side, the majority of retailers are talking to us more and more about using our data to figure out how to do their own brand or private label. So we have two things that are really disrupting retail even more, and this is in every industry that we play in. So this is a slide that talks about what are the opportunities for a manufacturer. What should you be thinking about? So definitely reevaluating your wholesale chain and looking at our data to say, are you partnered with the right retailers? Right? Our consumer data is helping clients, and our checkout data is helping clients with that. Your direct-to-consumer, you got to be very careful with that, right? Because you don't want to upset the channel. But yet you have to find growth. You got to be where the consumer wants you to be. The third one is the one I want to talk about for just 1 minute, which is the platforms. Notice I'm not calling them retailers. You got Amazon. You need to have a first-party strategy. You need to have a third-party strategy. You need to have a Jet strategy. And I was just with Jet last week, and they would tell me you have to have a Jet Walmart strategy. So I said it. Okay. And you need to have an eBay strategy, because the consumer is going to decide what platforms they're going to play on for your industry and for your brands and for your competitive brands, and you need to be at least trialing something in most of these. Now the big aversion that I hear is, I have a luxury brand, I really don't know that I want my brand associated with an everyday low price retailer. And Jet's got to figure that out. They really do. But you really should have something going on in terms of some different pilots with each of those retailers, each of those platforms. Thank you. So there's some consignment things going on, Poshmark, Tradesees. Mostly this is being done with women's handbags and women's fashion footwear. Those are the things that seem to be taking off, but these are starting to be some pretty big numbers. So we're keeping an eye on this. I don't ever think this is going to approach 5% of the market for any industry that we track, but we're keeping an eye on it. It's a new way for commerce. Some brand this re-commerce of consignment reselling things. But it is interesting out there. I don't have time to go through this. This is just some of Marshall and I do a best-in-class thing. This is highly discretionary. This does not have data behind it. But there's reasons for each one of these of who's best in class and why. If you're not talking about that at your company to say, who's best in class at doing these things that we're having a hard time with, you really should be asking the question that, because there's some great examples of some good things happening out there in retail. Okay. 5? Okay, excellent. Don't have to be exact? No? Sure? Okay, it's late night, so I got it. Okay, this is the top company in retail in the United States. Ulta just posted an 11.4% comp on top of a 14% comp this time last year. They're opening 100 stores a year. They're doing everything right, and the consumer is rewarding them. Now, it doesn't hurt that they're in the fastest growing industry, right? That doesn't hurt. But a couple of things that are unique about them. They're the only retailer that we know that has the complete breadth of assortment. They've got from the lowest mass brands, some semblance, all the way to the highest prestige brands, all under one roof. That's unique. They also have a service model in most of their stores, not all of them. They have a salon, right? I had to take my 16-year-old daughter to get a curly thingy, right? I know nothing about these curly things. So her type of hair, there's a lot of questions you need to ask that I know nothing about. And so I went in there, and the lady on the floor actually wasn't that versed on it. But she said, hang on for a minute. And the lady that was coloring somebody's hair in the salon came over and said, oh yeah, here's the difference between these three. The reason why that was $50 more is this, that, and the other. Your daughter's hair has this kind of texture to it, so I recommend this one. It was amazing. It was a great retail experience, right? So that service element is really good. And Mary Dillon has been called, she's the CEO, that she really understands the theater of retail. The other thing that I will tell you that I really like that they do is they manage their private label in a way that's respectful to the consumer. They don't try to put their brand right next to the national brand and say the only difference is that it's $10 cheaper. They separate it, they tell the story, they really do a good job of it. So there's a reason why they're the top coffee retailer in the US. I do think we're going to see more retailers go out of business between now and the end of the year. We've had 11 hit bankruptcy. We had the 12th one happen last week with Toys R Us, which we're in the toys industry in terms of tracking, so this is very concerning to us. We expect that there may be up to 20 retailers. This is a Credit Suisse report, and they're saying upwards of 10,000 stores. The point they make here is that there's more going on in terms of retailers either going out of business or closing stores than there was during the recession. So we are really hitting a retail recession right now to some degree with store retail in the U.S. These are the top comping retailers in the U.S. and the lowest comping retailers in the U.S. We have a lot of sick retailers here that are really having a hard time. If they're comping negative on top of negative, anything more than 5%, then they really are on the watch list, right? We have, if you look at Moody's list of retailers, we have 19 that are on credit watch right now, on the most severe level of credit watch. And I've never seen anything like it. Usually we're always managing 2, 3, 4. Never seen this many this time on here. We're gonna have to open up the bar again if I keep doing this doom and gloom thing, right? This is some. You're in for that? Okay. So this is some more trending information. You can see sports bras up, swimwear up, shapewear slightly down. So looking at trending information is really, really important. And the team can certainly help you with that. Anything else you want to say on this one, Todd?
Yeah, just, it's interesting, there's lots of disruption in the internet with your needs, with trim codes, with not relevance, but it's not enough innovation and to really grow the category because it's process innovation as opposed to product innovation.
Okay. We'll have some questions here at the end. And the point you wanted to make on this one is just the penetration of the different subcategories online. This is going to be an important one to watch. Once again, you should have a point of view of how much of your business is going to go online, and at what point do you think it's mature? How much of your competition business is online versus yours? Have they found some new distribution that they're getting some growth on? These are really important questions that you need to be on.
What's the difference between the two bars on that chart?
It's year over year, I'm sorry, 16 versus 17. Sorry, we should have noted that. Yeah. This is just some fun ranking, maybe not so much fun, depending on where you sell your product through. So this is the top online intimate retailers, and you can see the trade-off between Amazon and Victoria's Secret. That's pretty, we usually don't see that much from one retailer. That's pretty wild. This does include sleep and swim. We're going to show one in a moment that has that taken out. We take that one out. Okay. And then Macy's, Nordstrom, and Kohl's. This is top online underwear, Amazon, but Duluth. I mean, how old of a company is that, Todd? How old of a company is that? Less than 10 years, right? Yeah.
5 or 6 years.
Yeah, the advertising is crazy, but it appeals. You can look at some other, I mean, if you want to look at another disruptive one, look at the shave industry for men. And look what happened with Dollar Shave Club. And that was some really interesting advertising I've met the CEO several times, Michael. He's a nut. And he has online advertising I can't even show in a professional environment. But it's edgy. It's edgy, and people tried it. I tried it, and with shavers. But the other stuff I liked is other stuff. And it became he got bought by Unilever for $1 billion. That's a heck of a start, right? And this is Amazon's growth in basics in both women's intimates, and this is both in dollars and percentage. That is pretty incredible. Amazon is going to absolutely capitalize on any purchase that is a repeat purchase. So I did have something up there on the Diaper Genie where they actually give you 5 to 15% off if you sign up for it to be replenished every quarter. So they are going to be just taking that model to the bank. You can just count on it, right? And then eventually when we have sensors that say that whatever needs to be replaced, the sensor will automatically order it for you, right? So that's the next thing that's certainly going to happen. Sensors are looking to be built into just about everything. So here's my final slide for you. These are the calls to actions that I spend with both brands and retailers. These are the things that I would recommend that you're talking about at your boardroom table. The first one is you need to watch the shift as the consumer starts spending or purchasing your products in different channels. And I know your core channel partners that you've always done business with are going to do everything they can to hold on to you and not let you be promiscuous. But you got to be where the consumer is. You've got to be. We've got examples of some of the top brands in the country that have waited and they just never caught up in terms of share of online. Brands also need to have a marketplace strategy and a platform strategy. You need to be testing, I think, on all the platforms. I would be. Also, retailers need to know when they can actually compete. When Amazon starts taking on a category and they have low share, there's really nothing a retailer can do except watch it for a while. At some point, they can start competing, but we've seen all kinds of things be deployed, and it's really difficult because you're going up against a platform, you're not going up against a retailer. We've seen retailers try to out-promote Amazon, do pricing things, and the algorithms in the pricing engine on Amazon just take them to their knees, right? Retailers need to be cautious of their private label strategy. Clearly, I just said that many of them are looking at expanding what they do with owned brands and private label. There's not many retailers that do it right, in my opinion. They go in for the short-term sale, they get it for a year, but it's not a brand that has longevity. Best retailer in the country that's doing private label right now is Target. Their Cat Jack brand that they did 15 months ago, launched 15 months ago, and this is public information, just eclipsed $2 billion in sales. Brian Cornell, the CEO, just announced that they're doing 9 more owned brands that they expect to be over $1 billion each. Stores are not dead. Continue to win that traffic. We are seeing some brands that are abandoning in a wholesale way what they do in terms of investment in stores. I think that's a mistake. You have to be very balanced about what you do with your channel strategy right now. And the last piece that I would leave you with is just innovate, 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 but innovate beyond your product. Innovate the way you go to market. Innovate the way that you talk to your consumer. Innovate the way that you track your consumer. And be deliberate about where you're going to distribute your product and where you're not going to distribute your product going forward. The days of ubiquitous distribution, of selling to anybody that will take your product, that is no longer a winning strategy. And I've got lots of proof points to show on that. So I hope this was interesting information. It was a little bit rushed, and I'll open it up for questions. We have the team that is our experts on this category, so you can either do overall retail ones, or you can go a little deep in the category. Ellen, we're going to do, 5 minutes, 10 minutes on questions? What's that? You have an hour? Wow, That's a huge compliment.
15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay, you bet. Yes, ma'am, back.
When you're talking about the platforms,
Yes,
you're talking about being a retailer on their platform, and then how would you advise somebody who would be a retailer on their platform against price gouging or price competition? Because
great
if
question.
platform is the direction to go, and you're a luxury retailer, even if you're an apparel business, but
Great question. So we have a gentleman that we work with, his name is Scott Mingo. Scott is probably the smartest person in e-commerce that I've ever met. He's the co-founder of Channel Advisors, which is a company that has been tracking e-commerce since its beginning, and it helps companies figure out which part they should be on. What Scott says is you don't want to be the brand that has the highest share on every platform, and you don't want to be the brand that has the lowest share on every platform right now. So that I think needs to be a little bit of a guiding principle until things settle down. Right now it's the wild, wild west. There's so much growth there. Brands are absolutely intoxicated, and I use that exact word, intoxicated, with the growth that they're getting on some of these platforms. At the end of the day, it's actually a display sale from stores. I mean, let's be honest about what this is. So I think what you need to do is you need to think about how your brand shows up on these platforms and how that fits into your overall channel strategy. If it means a store, then do a store. If it means that you are empowering somebody you sell through distribution to only let those 2 or 3 players be on marketplace and say no to everybody else, that seems to be a pretty interesting strategy that a lot of brands are deploying. The biggest cons of being on the platforms is loss of control of your pricing and fraud, especially in marketplace. And I think things are settling out a little bit on the pricing side of things. On the fraud piece, I'd like to say that I'm hearing from the brands that there's lots of things that Amazon's doing to help with that. I'm not hearing that. I'm sorry. And if you think about, if many of you distribute your product in Asia, Alibaba, any of those platforms where you're hooking up buyers and sellers and they have anonymity to some degree, you're going to have fraud, period. So did that answer your question? I'm going to be around afterwards if you want to go a little deeper on that. Just be in the back.
What exactly do you mean by fraud? Do you mean counterfeit?
Yes, I do. Yeah, so the big public one that's known, that's been in the news is Birkenstock. So there were so many counterfeit pairs of sandals out there that Birkenstock said, we will not sell on Amazon. You will see that they sell on Amazon. It's a problem. I have a Samsung S8, which is a fast charging cell phone, but you have to have a special charger for it. I would challenge you to find a charger on Amazon that works in that phone. They're all counterfeit. All of them. They all say Samsung on it. They're all counterfeit. All of them. I have not found one. The best thing you can do is read the reviews, and after like 100 of them have been sold, somebody will come on there and say it's counterfeit, move on to the next one. Yeah, it's a problem. It's a real problem. You have a follow-up?
Well, I was trained to identify counterfeits. The company I work for.
Yes.
I work for a very large manufacturer. And I'm not working for the company anymore, but as I walk around, I see them everywhere. I know what they look like.
Yes.
They're in all the stores, all these small stores where I live. In Queens, I see them coming in, and the people
Are
selling
they real? Are they counterfeits?
They're counterfeits.
Yes. This is a real
I
problem
can tell
for brands.
by looking at them. When
Yes.
I worked for the company that did manufacturing overseas, generally, anytime you send something out, you send an elastic out, if it's got your name brand on it, as soon as you start it, somebody copies it and sells it to somebody else.
Yeah.
So once the elastic is out there with your name on it,
It's a real problem.
everybody's just making it, putting your elastic on it, and the people out there think that's your product.
One last comment on this, and then we'll move on. I was at the Shop Talk conference. If your company doesn't go to Shop Talk, and we don't sponsor it or anything, it is the best retail conference, I think, in the world. So they've done it 2 years now. At first, the first year it was really getting together startups in retail with money, investors. And so the concepts that came out in the conference were just spectacular, right? Now big companies are into it, but the head of Amazon Marketplace, who's been in the job for 11 years, claims that they're putting some new things in place to authenticate. But I'm just not hearing from brands that it's really catching on. So we'll move on from the fraud, because I think there's something big. Yes, ma'am.
There's nothing new about not promoting.
No, ma'am.
That's what designed it.
Yes.
Next month, I will be in this industry 70 years.
Wow, fantastic.
And I will tell you that I have people, I work for a high-end, not an Amazon, a virtual one, okay?
Fantastic.
And every time somebody knocked off garments, I would send that person a bill for $5,000. I stopped doing it.
That's one way to handle it. I like it. I might put that in my discussion. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm not exactly sure if it's relevant here.
Yes.
The women's dress is a whole marketing aspect of the pattern.
Yes.
Because it's a whole different world,
Yes.
marketing today in terms of digital
Oh, that's good.
channels. And I'm just wondering.
Didn't have enough time.
So
Yeah,
is there
The disruption, the digital, how to reach. One thing that we have seen, especially on the social platforms, the only one that's absolutely killing is Facebook. All the rest are such in a distant second, third, in terms of helping a brand get to a consumer and actually doing commerce. Amazon or Facebook is killing it.
So you're connecting Facebook and Instagram the same?
Yeah, but the platform of Facebook is killing it. The platform of Instagram, we're not hearing from brands that that's been highly successful. They're testing things. There's a lot of people on Instagram, clearly Snapchat, but they don't have a commerce element. It's not natural. It's a forced fit. And Facebook really went about it in the right way. They really have scientists that are helping make that happen. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Is some of this growth due to acquisitions or?
Yes.
Like Ulta, which is the fastest growing, they just merged with Mac. So now they're selling that product. We never sold
Yes.
suits with any other brands.
Yeah, good point.
Is that something that's kind of you're seeing?
Oh, certainly. There's going to be consolidation, mergers, partnerships. There's going to be crazy stuff going on. One of the biggest things that's going on right now is private equity's play in retail like never before. I don't know what the long-term impact of that is. When a private equity company takes over a retailer, I will tell you, in working with all the retailers we work with, the posture of that retailer changes overnight. And it doesn't seem as grounded on the consumer. It seems grounded on changing the valuation of the company, shortcuts to get there, I don't know that it's good for retail, just my opinion. I don't think there's any private equity companies in here. We sell a lot of data to private equity, so maybe I'm cutting off my nose and stuff in my face, but I don't think it's a good thing for retail and the consumer. This man in the back.
Question, you
Then I'm
mentioned
sorry,
about,
Mitch next.
you had mentioned about the stores going private label.
Yes.
Investing in private label,
Yes.
which they aren't very good at. And we've seen it over the years,
Yes.
probably every 20 years. How long do you think this trend is?
Well, this is a cyclical trend. I mean, you see it. Many of you have been in the industry longer than I have. You see the cycles of retailers going in and going out. A couple of things that I see that are a little different is the new trend in private label with retailers is not to have a branded player make it. They're really going outside that. At least in the hard lines and soft lines industries, predominantly it was, get the major names and it's basically a fighter brand out there under a different label. But we're finding more and more retailers want to go with a company that's not in the industry, and they're also wanting to position the brand at the mid-tier or the high end, not the opening price point. That's another trend. So I don't know if that's going to accelerate the trend. We'll see. The industry that went private label really hard that I think was a total failure was the office supplies industry. You had the CEOs of the office supply superstores mandate that 30% of their sales be private label. And they switched things in the stores to Staples brand, and Office Depot, Office Max brand. And what the consumer did is they went online and shopped the major brand. Many of them shifted. it just helped the acceleration of shifting to Amazon. And I think it was a total mistake. Yeah. I got a point here, and I'll come back here. Yes, sir.
In your opening slides, you made comments about consumers looking for images and memories.
Yes.
When you meet with retailers, how much of a discussion do you have about the access that they have with these off-online stores? What we're looking for, how to connect with the consumers, how to direct them in the store,
Yes.
new and exciting.
I wish those were the conversations I was having with retailers.
It is available. Some do it.
The conversations we're having with retailers right now are fighting for their lives. Some of them are certainly trying to do some innovative things, but the capital available to do that as they fight the fight against the encroachment of Amazon is really tough, right? I wish we were having those conversations with more retailers. I hate to be so doom and gloomy, but some of them are having those conversations. And you can see it in their advertising. I love some retailers that say, look, we're not going to out Amazon. We're going to be who we're going to be, and we're going to double down on stores, and we're going to concentrate on our consumer. So that's the winning strategy. And hopefully they have enough money in the bank to weather the storm. Yes, sir. And then I'll get you in the back.
I don't think I saw much mention about the discount channel, the Marmaxes, commercial racks. They're
Still growing.
Bucking the trend, they're growing like crazy.
Yes.
You see the future there and the impact on the traditional mall with department stores.
Wow, there's a lot of brands. Yeah,
So-
wow, awesome. Okay, let me get a chair. No. So off-price, fast fashion, hot areas, still growing, still expanding. I think the 1.1 comp from TJX scared some people in terms of what is the outlook of that long term. So we'll see. But they're still opening stores. And consumers love discount, period. And I think they got hooked on it post-recession and they stuck with it. And that's driven the growth. Malls, oh my gosh. Malls are going to be the tale of 2 or 3 cities, right? You're going to have the malls that are the higher end malls that are going to survive because they are an experience and they still have a draw and they have a geography that works for them. The mid-tier malls, some of those are going to win, some of those are going to perish unless they can freshen them up. And then the lower tier malls around the country that used to be the gathering spot, but yet the demographic of the area is challenged, I really see those being repurposed. I know that people like Robin Lewis are out there saying 30-40% of the malls are dead. I'm not that doomy gloomy, but there will definitely be a culling of the mall space. And the owners of the malls that own the lease space are really racking their brains on what else can they put in there to make it more memory, experience, entertainment. And so you'll see a lot of innovative things being tried there. Will it be enough? The consumer will tell us. I don't know. Yes, sir. I have one more question or one or two more. I know. Okay.
Could you comment on
Yes, sir.
Amazon's capturing of data
Yes.
and then creating a private label like they did in
Yes.
opening price point abroad, finding something that sells well and turning it into a private label?
Yes. Expect them to continue to do that. When Amazon first started, when I was at Hewlett Packard, we started selling our products through Amazon. I remember getting the phone call that, because I had both the sales group for Hewlett Packard, I also had the market research part. That's my relationship with NPD. I used to buy a lot of data from them. They approached us and said, we want to sell you data on all the adjacent, everything we're learning about when somebody comes in and wants to buy your category. Now this was 10 years ago that they were trying to sell me data on this. They have been mining that data on consumers, and now they have 60% of the U.S. population on crime. What they know about the consumer is amazing. So I think they're going to be picky about what they do in terms of their own brands, but I think they're going to be highly successful. The thing that I love about Amazon too is that they start something and they shut it right down if it doesn't work. And they're testing so many things. I used to try to keep a slide of all the different things that they're testing because they come out with something new every day. It was 3 slides, over 100 images, and I just stopped doing it. I can't keep up with it, right? Because not only do I have to keep up with what they're starting, but also what they're shutting down. They have been successful in everything. And one would argue whether they've been successful in fashion to date or not. They certainly were not successful in fresh food. That's why they bought Whole Foods, right? And if you all, there was a great article that came out last week from a company called Vasos that actually tracked the volume of what happened in the Whole Foods stores when Amazon took them over and started discounting, and which retailers they took share from. It's a fascinating read. It's out there. It's been circulated around. It's been out for about a week. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.